Welcome to Edge of Intelligence. I'm your host, Carl Owen, a fractional CIO and AI advisor at Protelligent. Today, we're joined by Marc Kerrest, CEO and founder of GPS DataViz, a platform that empowers sports organizations to turn raw GPS, heart rate, and performance data into automated machine learning-driven insights in under a minute. Marc's background spans financial trading, soccer coaching at elite levels, and advanced analytics, uniquely combining domain passion with machine learning expertise. Marc, it's fantastic to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Carl. Really excited for the conversation.
Yeah, really excited to have you. Marc, you've blended performance analytics with real-world coaching. How did your path from financial markets and college soccer shape your vision for GPS DataViz?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. I think people who know me well kind of see this as the perfect blend of some of the things that I've been successful with over my career. Grew up very passionate about soccer, grew up in Europe. My dad played soccer at a high level, and then played college soccer, did a little bit of coaching and went into finance. I was always pretty strong in math, was something I really enjoyed. So I started working in commodity derivatives. I started trading all commodities and then focused very much on natural gas. And through that work, obviously did a lot of data analysis, modeling data, looking at historical trends and trying to find patterns in data that help, look at what is going to happen going forward. And so, when I fell into the idea for GPS DataViz, it was kind of the perfect blend of doing all that data analysis, being able to model data and take complex data and explain it to people in a really easy to understand way, and then bringing that to sports, right, where teams are now collecting a lot of data on their athletes and helping them streamline their workflows around that data and really get the extra edge that they're looking for from the data they're collecting.
Well, GPS DataViz promises insights in under 60 seconds. What key athlete or team outcomes are you helping coaches unlock with that?
Yeah, the reality is, so we are purely a software, right? So teams are already buying a bunch of different hardware to measure performance of their athletes, right? The main thing most of our teams work with is GPS tracking to kind of track all their movements on the field, how much distance they're covering, high speed running, things like that. They'll do heart rate monitoring and then a number of different testing in the gym and to try to measure those outputs. For us, right, it gives those teams a lot of data, but to get insights from that data takes a lot of time. We've basically identified certain patterns in the data, not just what the data says on the day, but patterns established over time that can flag practitioners and let them know kind of when their athletes are at a higher risk of injury, right? If no one can predict injuries, right? And obviously contact injuries happen and there's nothing that can really be done about that. But there are certain patterns in training and over time that have shown, significant higher risk of injury. And that's kind of what we try to isolate for practitioners. Hey, this pattern we've seen in the past has led to these types of injuries. And sometimes that'll slip through the cracks. Coaches have a lot on their plate, and we deliver those insights in under 60 seconds. On the flip side, also when an athlete achieves a new PR or is hitting some high performance, right? You want to reward that behavior. That's what you're striving for. Maybe it's that athlete's been sleeping really well and taking, really good care of their nutrition. And now that's all combining to put them at peak performance. You've got to celebrate that because that's what you're striving for. And so that's the behavior you want to reward. And you want to educate your athlete, hey, whatever you're doing right now is working really well. So there's two sides to the coin, and we automate insights on both sides for practitioners, like you said, in under 60 seconds.
That's awesome. Well, what types of teams, college, pro, elite, youth, are you most engaging, or your most engaged users, and what problems do they come to you with?
Yeah, so we started in college soccer. Like I said, my background's in soccer. I was coaching a college soccer team. That's kind of how we came up with the idea. We saw kind of that void in the market. And so we started in college soccer. That is still our biggest market. That's where we have the most teams. But, again, my background's in soccer. Early on in our journey, I kind of identified, hey, I love soccer. That's kind of my passion. I do watch a lot of other sports, and obviously soccer is not the biggest sport in the U.S., right? So we quickly pivoted and said, hey, we've got to add other sports. So, college football has become a big one for us. College basketball, 2 years ago, we started working with South Carolina women's basketball, who went 38-0 and had a perfect undefeated season, beat Caitlin Clark in Iowa in the most watched basketball game in the last 5 years in the final. And so last year we had 8 of the top 25 in women's college basketball. So we've expanded pretty quickly across those sports. Again, started in college, we do work with a number of professional teams. Start in the NWSL Professional Women's Soccer League in the U.S., work with the WNBA Minnesota Lynx, who were in the finals last year, and now we work with a number of NFL teams, NBA teams, NHL teams as well. And then down to the lower levels, like you said, right? The reality is the technologies that we're integrating, 10 years ago were prohibitively expensive and just used by professional teams. Now you're seeing it used by all the college teams and even, high school level teams, club teams. So we do work with a number of high school teams, primarily in football, where they have, a little bit more budget and have more access to these types of devices. But also, some high school soccer teams, high school basketball teams, and starting to work at the club level as well. So kind of working across all levels. We have a few different levels to the service that we can offer. And obviously at the professional level, we're customizing a lot of solutions for them because they have specific views on how they want to see the data. But it is something we can automate really at all levels.
I have to think teams would be clamoring for this. I mean, just from an injury prevention perspective, if nothing else.
I think it's when we started, right, people didn't even know who we were and what we were doing. And so I think the name sometimes is deceiving to people. They thought we were a GPS company. We started by analyzing GPS data. That's hence the name. But, what I've realized in sports, right, is it's very much, a FOMO world where no one wants to be first, right? When you're the new kid on the block and you're trying to tell people, hey, this is what we do, there's a little bit of apprehension there, which is natural, right? These are high level practitioners at the elite level, and they can't really take a risk on something that hasn't been proven. We have had to prove ourselves a little bit. That said, when we do get a team on board, very quickly other teams in the league start to look around and say, hey, a few of these teams are using this program. What are we missing here? And I think the biggest thing we try to do is we don't look at our customers as just customers. We really look at them as partners, right? We are early in our journey. We always feel the need to prove ourselves, right? And we want to build great relationships and deliver a great product and a great service. And on the flip side, we kind of tell them, hey, we are pretty new. So when that other guy who's just hearing about us wants to vet our solution, we would love if he could pick up the phone and talk to you. And, we have built some great partnerships at all levels. And that's, I think, been a big reason why we've been able to grow the way.
Well, can you share a standout success story, like reducing injuries, optimizing training load, or improving performance for us?
So one of the big things, right, with any team we work with is we are always confidential about their data. So that's something, it's their data. We provide them services around their data. It's not something we share ever in particular, but one of our NFL teams actually had an athlete who was their starting quarterback. So he was not doing a lot of high-speed running during practice because they were kind of safeguarding him for the games. And then they made a change at the quarterback position, and he now started doing a lot more high-speed running at practice. And so, he started doing a lot more sprint distance. And the second day of that sprint distance, we kind of flagged that player and said, hey, this is a big spike in this metric. And the third day, he kind of had some more sprint distance, and he pulled up. And the practitioners kind of looked back and said, oh, we got a signal yesterday. And they kind of called us, hey, why did this pop up? The athlete is an amazing athlete. That's why he's playing at that level. He's incredibly resilient. He was fine to play a couple days later. So it wasn't a huge issue. We have had a number of, and I wouldn't call them success stories. There have been a number of times when we flagged athletes and the practitioners have kind of moved forward without changing anything. And then those athletes have had pretty significant injuries. And then those practitioners will come to us and say, hey, why was this athlete flagged? We'll kind of run through it with them and say why, what happened. And then they'll kind of reveal what the outcome was. And so I think for us, right, again, being new on this journey, that's kind of provided validity. Those practitioners certainly pay more attention to our flags after those episodes. I think a big success story for us is that South Carolina women's basketball story, right? I think, I can't take credit for them going 38-0, right? Don Staley is an amazing coach. And, they had maybe 4 or 5 players who went in the first round of the WNBA draft. So I'm not going to tell you that if you sign up with us, you're going to go undefeated and win the national championship. There's obviously a lot more that goes into it. But part of that, like I said, right, a lot of teams have good players. If those players are on the court or on the field, they've got a good chance at winning those games. And I think the availability, and we work closely with Molly Benetti, their head of performance. She does a great job. And she sees it as my primary job is to keep my athletes available. And so for her that year, she had basically 100% availability. Now, again, big part of it is the work that she does with those athletes year round. But I'd like to think that our process and helping streamline some of those insights kind of speeds up her process and helps her make sure she's not missing anything during the season. Because again, these coaches get so busy during the season. And so I think that's really a success story for us, one of those outcomes where, it all kind of lines up and obviously lifting the title at the end of the season is kind of the goal for everyone when they start rolling out the balls.
Well, I have to think it could also be used as or leveraged as a recruiting tool too, right? Showing that you value your teammates and.
For sure, and especially the college athletics is changing now with the transfer portal. So, it is really a short-term lease with each athlete you have. I think people used to have a 4-year contract. Now it's much more of a 6 or 8 month contract. And how are you going to help me improve and get to the next level? And part of that is what extra care are you delivering for that athlete to make sure that they're optimizing their performance? And our tool is certainly one of those things that programs value.
Absolutely. Well, on the flip side, what feedback keeps you up at night? Competitive pressure, accuracy of the data, adoption?
Well, we are very much a startup, so there are ebbs and flows for sure. We're not responsible for collecting the data. We integrate with different companies. I would not tell you on this call, but offline, obviously, I've seen data from a lot of different companies, and I could quickly isolate which ones have the best data. And we do consult with our customers when they're looking to change providers. We will tell them off the record, these are providers that will give you the best data because there are a number of companies out there doing great things. Competitive landscape. There's obviously always going to be other companies trying to find solutions. I think given what we've built and where we are, for us, it's really about executing. Like I said, I think we have some great relationships with some elite practitioners, and that's really allowed us to tailor our solution and keep building out functionalities that move the needle at the highest levels. And so I think for us, it's really just about execution, right? Are we keeping up those relationships? Are we delivering what our customers need, right? Are we responsive? Because again, if you're a professional team and you need an answer, you needed it yesterday. So if it takes you 2 days to fix it for them, that's too late, right? If they have a coach asking them for something, they needed it yesterday. And so for us, I think something we always do is underpromise and overdeliver. If I tell you, hey, we will have this for you in 2 weeks, my goal is to have it for you by the end of this week, because I know that you need it. If you're waiting on me, then that's no good. And so we're always going to give you a timeline, but we're always going to aim to beat that timeline. And I think we've done that consistently, which is why we've had the adoption that we have.
Well, digging into the product a little bit, how much of the analytics in DataViz is powered by machine learning versus rule-based aggregation?
So it is a little bit of both, right? So we have some specific ways that we flag based on different metrics. That said, a lot of what we are analyzing is huge data sets, right? So we do run it through our machine learning algorithms, especially to basically tailor each team's platform to their specific needs, right? We have an off-the-shelf model. We will tailor the metrics to what a team's looking at, but no team has the same platform because everything is detailed to what their historical data says. And so that's powered by machine learning. And then, obviously the use of AI is all the rage these days. For us, what we've seen, and right, there's a lot of AI companies out there. There's a lot of hype around AI because that's what everyone's talking about. For us, it's making it really pertinent to our users, right? What do our users need AI for? Well, a lot of the stuff that they're asking our AI tool about is stuff they could find elsewhere in our platform. It's really just about the speed and the efficiency, right? If a coach comes into a practitioner's office and has a specific one-off question, in the past, it's taken that practitioner an hour. He'll get back to the coach with the solution. The coach will look at it for 10 seconds and throw it in the trash. And that practitioner just missed dinner with his family, right? Because the coach has already moved on and thinking about something else. And that practitioner put in an hour to get that answer. For us, it's how can we deliver that in seconds? And so when a coach steps into our practitioner's office and has a specific question, that practitioner can just ask our AI. Our AI is going to siphon through all the data that team has and give that coach the answer right away. And that's going to lead to a conversation, right? The response is going to have a follow-up question, which can be answered right away. And now the coach and the practitioner are on the same page with the data, and it creates buy-in from the coach, right? Now the coach knows, if I have a specific question, this guy's going to be able to answer it. We're going to have a conversation around it. I'm going to know what I need to know right away and be able to move forward. We're now building our AI solution where you can just voice dictate in your phone, while you're on the field. Coach asks you something, you pull out your phone, you voice dictate to your phone, and our AI will tell you the answer, build the visual, whatever it is that you need so that you can get that response in real time. And that's really one of the big things we're trying to do is create efficiencies, right? These practitioners are so busy and they're tasked with so much that we want to make it so they can get those responses in seconds rather than hours. Because if you come to a coach 2 hours later, it's too late. They already decide what they're going to do tomorrow. And that question they had, they probably don't care anymore. So we want to make it so it's in real time. And now you have buy-in throughout the staff and you're really getting the answers you need.
That's awesome. Well, your system takes in a lot of feeds, right? So GPS, heart rate, force plate, velocity-based training, and other subjective data, I would imagine. But how automated, and I know you've alluded to this a little bit, but how automated are those ingestion and processing pipelines?
I mean, we try to make it as automated as possible. For people who are doing subjective wellness surveys, it is fully automated. The athletes get a push notification at whatever time the practitioner wants, and the practitioner gets an email in his inbox without lifting a button that has all those responses aggregated. They're analyzed over time. They're contextualized. So, that is literally zero touch point. When we are integrating data from a certain system, generally we ingest that data via API directly with the hardware provider. So for our users, it's as simple as coming into our software, clicking 2 buttons, that data gets pulled in a matter of seconds. And a few seconds later, you've got a detailed report in your inbox, which tells you everything you need to know about that day's session and what that data represents over time. So, when we say automated, we really mean automated, and anything, that even those clicking those couple buttons, we are starting to put in some webhooks so that stuff happens regularly on a daily basis, and practitioners don't even have to log in. They're done training. They always train at a certain time on a certain day. They can just get their report in their inbox without even logging into our platform. So we're always trying to make it more automated for the user. Again, if it's 45 seconds, I'm generally happy. Can we make that 45 seconds 0 seconds and really just make it fully automated? And that's what we're always striving to do.
Well, are you using any generative AI or predictive models? Are any of them being piloted for like fatigue forecasting or injury risk forecasting?
Yeah, so we do have predictive modeling for sure. So, that's something we've had for about a year now. Again, looking at historical data, again, it's all dependent on how good the data we're getting, right? But we do have a lot of users who tag their training sessions really accurately. And they will use our predictive models to kind of forecast out their load for the week and see where their athletes will be at going into their next game. And if their data is pretty accurate, we will forecast that load within 95% accuracy. So we are doing a lot of that stuff. Again, I think that's really the future, right? I think we've automated a lot of things that used to be manual processes, but for us, it's how can we keep pushing the envelope? So much data that our teams collect is looking at what's already happened. And so we're trying to help them with the vast amounts of data that they've already collected, better forecast what they're going to do so that instead of getting to a Saturday and saying, man, we cooked our wide receivers this week, they're going to have a tough time tomorrow. You can look at it on a Tuesday and go to your coach and say, coach, these 2 drills we're going to do this week are going to cook our wide receivers and give them way too much sprint distance. Can we get what we need tactically out of it by reducing the duration by 5 minutes? Or when we're doing it, can we rotate our ones a little bit more so that the other guys get more reps and that those guys are in a good spot going into the weekend? And so that's really a lot of the functionality that we're providing that at the highest levels makes a big difference.
Well, so obviously data quality is a big deal, a huge deal, especially with what you're doing here. So are you seeing any data quality normalization or integration breakdowns in your current deployments?
Again, we rely on the hardware provider. So, I hear sometimes from my engineers, some of their APIs are great. Some of them are probably not as good, right? These are hardware companies. They're not software companies. So they do have a software cloud for their customers to see the data. They do have third-party APIs so that their customers can get data into other places. Sometimes it's not a huge focus of theirs. So yes, I mean, again, some of these companies are really strong companies in doing these things at a high level. The accuracy of the data you get is really, really high quality, and the way they're able to test these athletes on a consistent basis with consistent metrics is super impressive. And so, for us, we are candid with our customers. Hey, you're using this hardware. You're going to have high quality data. You're going to get great insights. Hey, if you're using this other provider, maybe the data quality is a little bit worse. And we also try to adjust as best we can. We have algorithms that'll flag data that's clearly an outlier and let a practitioner know, hey, this data looks off, and they can skip that data point. We also have easy ways for them to overwrite data in our platform, and our platform will make it very obvious when there's a bad data point. So we do allow our practitioners to really easily cleanse their data because, again, our insights are only as good as the data in our platform. And so if a bad data point comes in, we want practitioners to be able to clean that up really easily. And so that's obviously functionality that we focused on as well. But I think some of the things we're measuring here are not super straightforward. And so I think it is something that's constantly evolving. But we do feel fortunate. I mean, a number of the companies that we integrate provide consistent data on a regular basis that really enhances our platform, right? Because their data is so good that our insights become really good. And without the accuracy of their data, our platform would be worthless. And so we feel fortunate there are so many companies out there really pushing the envelope and doing a great job monitoring all these things.
Well, what manual tasks are out there that are still slowing things down?
Um, you'd be surprised. So, I mean, the reality, right, is that when you look at the marketplace for the data that we're working with, right, that you have a few solutions. So, any hardware has a cloud software, like I said. But again, that's not the hardware company's priority. Their priority is delivering the data to the users. And the reality is, 10 years ago, like I said, these hardwares were very expensive. So, it's really just professional teams collecting this type of data. And so, systems that were built back then were built for a PhD sports scientist whose only job is to ingest this data and create visuals and dashboards and analytics that are useful for their club. They have a lot of time on their hands, they have a lot of expertise, and so they're able to build out certain dashboards and whatever works for their situation, right? The reality is that's not the market anymore, right? College athletics is using all of this hardware now. And some colleges have huge bandwidth and expertise where they have people whose sole job is to analyze this data. But other times that's not the case, right? And certainly at the lower levels, at the high school level or the club levels. So, you have practitioners who are maybe looking in the cloud from those hardwares. But if you're using 3 or 4 different systems, you've got to look in 3 or 4 different places to see all the data around one athlete, right? And so again, by the time you get to the 4th place, you forgot what it said in the first place. Right. And so we bring that all into one place. We also aggregate flags across all those hardware. So we make it automated. I mean, we talk to a number of people who are still doing these things in Excel or in Power BI. In the strength and conditioning community, there is a strong push. I need to learn how to, write Shiny apps in R or how to code. And again, when I meet with these practitioners, these were phenomenal athletes. A lot of these people, I need to stand on a stool when we get a picture because, right, they're huge people. And I'm not that guy, right? I was decent at sports, but I'm a data nerd, right? And so what I tell them is, hey, I can't lift that barbell, but you can teach that athlete how to lift that barbell. Don't spend your time behind a computer screen. Let me be your data nerd. I've spent 20 years just analyzing data. A big analogy I will give practitioners is, are you flying to your next game? And they'll say, yeah. And I said, okay, well, did you build that plane yourself? And they'll say, no, of course not. We bought it from Boeing. And I said, yeah, because Boeing builds planes for everyone, right? Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, we analyze data for everyone. So why would you spend, time and energy hiring your own engineers? You got 4 in-house engineers who are going to build something in a year that will still be years behind what we've built because we have more engineers and we've optimized it across all these teams and gotten insights from all these teams about what they need. So we've got the finished product. And so those 4 engineers in 1 year would cost you what it would cost to hire us for 20 years, right? So why are you taking that route? But again, we are a new company, right? So people had to have solutions before we showed up. And so
That's right.
when people have processes in place, it's hard to replace those processes because someone is owning that process, someone is tied to that process. And ultimately, sometimes they feel threatened that we're trying to take their jobs. And I think the first thing we try to educate them on is, I'm not trying to take your job. We still need someone to analyze the data. We still need someone to have that conversation with the coach. I'm just trying to give you a tool to make you more efficient at your job and to allow you to make sure you're not missing anything and to make sure you're having the right conversations. And again, it takes time, but I think we're starting to move the needle.
Yeah, I mean, part of that, it's always been done this way. We've always done it this way, so we can't change from that. You fight that everywhere you go, I'm sure.
For sure. But again, the longer I've been on this journey and the more we start working with higher level practitioners, the less we hear that, because I think we do have validity now to our solution, and people are starting to realize, hey, that guy at that team brought in this software. He didn't lose his job. He actually got promoted, because instead of being the guy behind his computer, he's now the director of sports science, because he's using a tool that's allowing him to optimize his workflows and really get those insights out that move the needle, rather than spending 4 hours trying to analyze the data himself and getting it out to someone when it's too late to make a decision.
Yeah. Well, you've talked a little bit about how you guys integrate with some of the hardware providers, but I mean, there's more integrations than that, right? I mean, athlete management systems, health records, video platforms, perhaps. I mean, how well does your system integrate with those tools?
So I mean, again, it varies for us. If we have a customer who wants us to integrate something, as long as the other provider is willing to let us, we will integrate with it. We've started to step on some toes for sure. I think there's some people who are doing certain things and offer a variety of products. And so when a customer says, "Hey, we know we're using you for this, but we're going to use GPS DataViz for this other aspect," obviously they're a little hesitant to kind of open up the doors for us and give us access to that data. So sometimes we've had to have some workarounds. But again, for us, we're very much customer focused, and so it's whatever our user needs is what we're going to deliver. And if there's a roadblock, we're going to find a way around it as best we can and make that workflow as easy as possible. So if we don't deliver everything for everyone, and we don't promise everything to everyone, because we know what we have and we've got certain capacities. But when we do hear a common request from a few customers, that's usually something we'll prioritize next.
Well, as you scale, you know, I can't imagine you not having, well, I wouldn't say issues, but how you handle it. It's got to be tough handling the data governance side of the house, from standardizing formats to retention, compliance, HIPAA. I mean, how do you guys handle that?
Yeah, so the same way that I don't ask someone to use an Excel spreadsheet to track all their stuff, I can't do compliance myself. We have a trusted third party we use who kind of has helped us automate our compliance journey. Again, there's for them, they work very similar to us. They have a lot of integrations directly with, our trusted partners. And again, we're hosted by AWS. We use Auth0 for user authentication. So, there's a lot of tools out there which allow us to not have to do it ourselves. And those are proven tools. And again, like I said, all our team's data is confidential, and that's of an utmost priority for us. We never want anyone's data to be accessed by anyone that team doesn't want us to access their data. So we do use third-party tools to help make sure that our processes are safe and secure, and that all our employees are just following certain safeguards. And multi-factor authentication, that's obviously something we're doing as well. So that is kind of a way for us to make sure that we're safeguarding everyone's data. You had another aspect of the question that I think I talked over.
No, I think you covered it. I mean, the only other thing I had in there was HIPAA, because I'm sure there's some HIPAA related issues.
Yeah, for sure. So some of the data that we get is governed by HIPAA. Some of it is not. But we've kind of gone a little bit above and beyond. So we do have HIPAA, GDPR, SOC 2, all of those things. Again, like I said, I think the trust of our customers is the utmost concern for us, and so making sure that we're safeguarding ourselves and doing all the things we do to make sure that their data is secure, right? And I think obviously that's a big concern for everyone. Again, we're not the ones generating the data, but we do house the data. I think if AWS gets hacked, I think the hackers will probably have more valuable stuff than how far some college athlete ran last week. But we do have trusted partners, and we do whatever we can to make sure all of our infrastructure is secure.
Well, so I mean, you and I, this, but I'm a fractional CIO, fractional CISO as well, and trying to get that practice up and running. So I asked this question quite a bit, but someone like me coming into like your organization, could you see that being a value? And if so, where do you see that someone like that helping?
Yeah, for sure. I think, again, it's just about the stage of our growth, right? We are still, we've been in operation for about 2.5 years now. We're still a pretty small company. So, I probably wear more hats than I should. I wore more hats 2 years ago than I do today, for sure. I tell everyone in my company, you're doing a job that at some point I probably did, because that's just the way these startups go.
Yeah,
Right now our head of IT, right, is kind of in charge of that. Ultimately, it is something we'd like to have someone whose specific job is to do that. And kind of like you said, right? I think someone who can do it on a fractional basis for a lot of different people because it is a specific skill set, similar to what we're offering, right? Why would you build it yourself if you have someone that has this expertise and can use it for a lot of people? So I think it is something we see eventually down the line. That's the path we'll go down. But again, it's just about growing. And there's a lot of companies these days who are just like raising as much money as they can and then hiring a lot of people. And then they realize the revenues aren't there. And then they have to fire a lot of people. We've kind of taken a different path towards that. We do have some backers who are very happy with the process of our or the progress we've had. But we are trying to grow in a sustainable way and make sure that as our revenues grow, we can be, a little more expansive, and we're getting there, but it's always a work in progress.
Better to be smart about it.
For sure, for sure.
Well, looking ahead, what features are top of mind, like live injury alerts, benchmark analytics, distributed team insights?
Yeah, so we've pushed a number of functionalities here in the last week or two, which I think will be game changers for our customers. I think the fall season is really busy for our teams. Football and college soccer are both in the fall, and those are big sports for us. Obviously, professional football, basketball, hockey, those will all kick off again in a little bit. So I think a lot of the stuff that we've built, I'm pretty eager to see, what the feedback is. I think most of the time when we push something new, we usually hit the mark about 95%. And then there's always a little bit of tweaking we can do, which is, again, where we really rely on our partners. We do have some big functionalities we're working on. I think our AI tool keeps evolving. Now it can build visuals. It can build tables. You can adjust the visuals. I think we do have some exciting stuff coming out with AI. We are building a kind of automated return to play model using historical data with our machine learning to kind of help practitioners know how to bring an athlete back to performance in a measured way with, certain testing metrics and benchmarks they should be hitting along the way. So that's something we're really excited about. But for us, I think I've had people ask me, when is the product going to be done? And I just laugh because we're never going to be done, right? I think if you're a technology company, you kind of have to always be evolving and at the forefront. And if you're standing in place, then you're moving backwards. So we do have a lot of stuff we're excited about that's coming down the pipeline for sure.
Well, I know you guys have your hands full with just the teams that you have and trying to grow that at the team sport level. But I mean, I can see applications for this much broader than that. Like, just the individual athlete, for example, or rehabilitation clinics or corporate wellness type things. I mean, do you guys plan or on your roadmap, do you have anything like that on your roadmap?
Yeah, I don't know. Can you see my board back there? Because I feel like you're reading on my roadmap right now.
I cannot. It's blurred out, but
for sure. I think sports is kind of where we started, right? And that's where I saw the need firsthand, and that's kind of how the product originated. As we've been on this journey, we've definitely started to see, hey, there are other applications for what we're doing. We are having some of those conversations right now. It's a little bit early stage, but we are definitely talking to companies in different sectors where we think that, the way we've built the technology is very easily scalable. And, again, I don't want to get ahead of myself because we don't have a signed contract, but we're talking about a pilot program with a company in a completely different vertical. And in order to, do what they need, we had to spend basically a day tweaking one of our functionalities that we had already had a request from some of our sports teams. So, we have technology that can be used for other use cases for sure. And that is something we're exploring. And I think that's a big area where we see a lot of potential growth.
Well, is there anything out there that's slowing your vision, like tech debt, compliance, machine learning maturity, or just funding?
If there is, I usually try to tick it off, right? I think my job as the founder and CEO is to make sure that I'm helping my employees who I've put together, and we have a great team, right? I just need to put them in a great place to succeed. So anything that gets in their way, right? And I think it varies from day to day. We're just trying to address it and get around it as quickly as we can. I think all those things you mentioned, right, become an issue at some point. I think obviously funding is the fuel to keep your business going. We've been fortunate where we have some investors who've been on this journey with us for a while and have, like I said, they're very in tune with our growth. I try to do a good job updating them on where we are, pretty consistently, so they don't have to reach out with questions because they're getting all the information they need. And we have basically surpassed generally what I've projected. I think projecting into the future can be really hard, but the more you do it, it's kind of like anything else. Practice makes better. And so I think there are always little hurdles, right? That's part of the startup world. But it's just, hey, how do we take this on? What do we need to do next? And then, empower our people in our organization to have the resources they need to kind of move along. And we seem to keep doing that.
Well, Marc, this has been awesome. Your strategy around automated performance analytics brings clarity to complex decisions. For listeners who want to learn more or connect with you, where should they go?
So obviously our website is a great place to start, www.gpsdataviz.com. I am available by email, marc.kerrest@gpsdataviz.com as well. I'm on Instagram, mkerrest, I believe. I'm on LinkedIn. I used to use Twitter, but don't use it as much anymore. We are generally available, I think, on our website. If you're looking for more information, there's an easy way to kind of get in touch with us. You can always reach out to sales@gpsdataviz.com or info@gpsdataviz.com. But these days with the internet, it's pretty easy to find me if you want to.
Well, thanks to everyone for tuning in. If this episode has you thinking about harnessing data, automating insights, or scaling intelligent systems in sports or other domains, let's connect. Visit Protelligent.com or find me on LinkedIn. Until next time, ask better questions, build smarter systems, and stay on the edge of intelligence.